welcome to Let's Play Steins Gate Zero. So, let's begin. The hatch opened. Bright light flooded my eyes. Where was I? My eyes narrowed. I could barely make out the summer's twilight sky. Let me say you a thing. The soundtrack for Steins Gate games is spectacular. It drives you to cry eventually. I didn't want to leave. I just wanted to disappear. But someone grabbed my arm and dragged me out. Thankfully, I'll just have to read the protagonist's speeches. I didn't have the energy to respond to my own nickname. I fell to the ground and wrapped my arms around myself. Mayuri ran to me and looked down, her face worried. But her kindness felt like nothing but a nuisance. Don't talk to me. Just leave me alone.
オカリン血まみれちゃんどうしたん
父さんタオルと水あと服も今すぐ手に入れてきて
どういうことか説明プリーズ。
いいから早く。
わかったお。
Daru ran to the door that led back inside the building.
オカリン大丈夫？しっかりして、死なないで。大丈夫、怪我してるわけじゃないよ。
Stop it. Just get away from me. Leave me alone. I couldn't save her. In fact, I killed her myself. Right here, 3 weeks ago. I killed her. I'm a murderer.
無駄だったんだ。何をやっても無駄だ。全部決まってしまっていることなんだよ。同じだ。真由里の時と同じなんだ。どれだけもがいたって結果は同じになる。
So I think Rintaro is dubbed. Maybe I can read only his thoughts. Let's see. No matter how many times I try, it will all converge back to the same result. The process doesn't matter. Whether you time travel or time leap, you can't go back and change the results of the past. I thought I understood that cruel truth. But now, I was forced to realize it again, and in the worst possible way.
無駄だよ。無駄なんだ。何もかも無駄なんだよ。俺はやっぱりクリスを助けられないんだ。
I knew this.
分かってたんだ。こうなるって予想してたんだ。もう疲れた。ずっと休んでないんだ。だからもういいよ。
オカリン、一体何が。
俺が殺した。殺してしまった。
マキセ・クリスをさ、刺し殺しちゃったんだ。
So to the people who watched or played Steins Gate, the original, this is the prequel for the bad ending.
殺した？嘘、そんな。でも安心して、まだもう一回分タイムトラベルはできる。
ほっといてくれ。俺のことなんか何度やったって結果は同じだ。
何言ってんの？諦めるつもり？オカリンおじさんの肩には何十億っていう人の命がかかってるんだよ。たった一回の失敗が何だって言うんだ。
クリスはどうやったって助けられない。世界線の収束には逆らえない。
Let's access the tips menu. A conquest in Steam. Note: this term refers to an infinite number of possible worlds. However, these worlds do not exist in parallel. Only one exists at a given time. Everything that occurs along a world line, from the past to the future, has been predetermined. Thus, no matter how much you change the past along a single world line, the result will converge to the same outcome. That's pretty bad for our hero. Let's just save for the first time and get back. That's the reality of this world. I learned that a long time ago.
こうなったらビンタしてでも気合い入れ直して。ダメだよ、無理強いするのは良くないよ。こんなボロボロになってるオカリン見て。でもさ、このままじゃ未来を変えられない。どうして未来のことをオカリン一人に押し付けるの？そんなの重すぎるよ。オカリンおじさんには世界の観測者としての能力があるからだよ。オカリンが望んだわけじゃないのに。それにもう一度やったってまたオカリンが傷つくだけだって思うな。未来のことを人一人で変えようなんてきっと無理なんだよ。だからそのためのシュタインズゲートで、気持ちはわかるよ。でもさ、私も未来をかけてここまで来てるんだよね。どっちにしろ2036年には戻れないんだ。そう簡単に諦めるつもりはないから。オカリンおじさん、一つだけ忠告しとく。このタイムマシンに残されてる燃料は有限なの。さっきは往復2回分しか残ってないって言ったけど、実はまだそれなりに余裕はある。それでも移動できる時間はおよそ344日分。片道のタイムトラベルだとしても今から1年と経たないうちに7月28日には届かなくなる。覚えといて。その日になったらさ、私はたとえ一人でも飛ぶよ。
Someone was saying something to me, but I couldn't understand the words. I didn't want to listen to anything. I just wanted to sleep. Just let this all end. Just let me go.
オカリン、オカリン、ねえ、オカリン、もう頑張らなくてもいいからね。泣いてもいいんだよ、オカリン。マユシーはそばにいるからね。
I don't know if my oldest words were the reason why, but The tears started to flow. I decided to forget everything. Ever since that day, I stopped going to the future gadget lab. Future Gadget Laboratory. Fictional. A lab in name only, it is actually a group of students who make strange inventions. Its founder, Rintaro Okabe, described it as a place where he can further his ambitions to overthrow the ruling structure of the world. To get there, head down Center Street from Akihabara Station. Then, when you get to the Suehiro Cho intersection, take a left at Kurumaebashi Street. Then head into the alleyway just in front of the next light and you'll find an old multi-purpose building called the Obiyama Building. It's on the second floor. UPX, the new symbol of Akihabara, was located right in front of the station. In the hall on the fourth floor, preparations had been going on all morning for the ATF Akihabara Techno Forum convention. Universities and labs from both inside and outside the country would work together to put on special seminars and symposiums at irregular intervals. My school, Tokyo Denki University, was participating as part of its industry collaboration efforts. Students were required to attend these seminars and submit reports to their instructors. Tokyo Denki University, first founded at a Denki school in 1907. In 1949, it became a college in Kanda, Tokyo. Denki University trains engineers and scientists to promote the healthy development of scientific technology. It was founded around the principle of practical study above all else, and its educational and research motto is "Technology is People." Because of the school's location, it was deeply involved in the development of Akihabara. So it's a real university. Otherwise, they wouldn't get credit for their related classes. In addition, I was supposed to help one of the lecturers, Associate Professor Izaki. I had just gotten a list from the reception desk at a shared lobby. I was waiting to check off the names of students who were coming to the lectures. There was still some time before the seminar started, so the lobby was mostly empty. None of the students on the list were here yet. I was bored, but I couldn't do anything but wait. The old me never could have imagined doing anything like this, but impressing Izaki was part of my new goal in life. Victor Chondria University. Yes, that was my new goal. Izaki did a lot of joint research projects with them and knew a lot of people there. The best first step to getting there my brain could come up with was being his assistant. Also, this convention was holding another seminar by Victor Chondria University after the one held this summer. Of course, that interested me too. Summer. An image of her as she was then flashed through my mind. I was trying to get to Victor Chondria so that I could learn about the work that Kurisu Makizi had been doing. I wanted to try to do it myself. Of course, I wasn't a genius like Kuriso. I knew there was no way I'd ever be able to do exactly what she did. But if I could do even 10% of it, honestly, I'm amazed that I've recovered so well. I thought that to myself and chuckled, just as a voice called to me from across the lobby.
ちょっとそこの方
I looked up and saw a young girl approaching from the elevator hall. She was short and petite. Everything about her was small. Minus the hair. I could kind of make out a few of the curves that don't appear until after puberty. So at least she wasn't in elementary school, but maybe middle school? For someone with such a cute face, she clearly didn't care about her appearance. Her hair wasn't styled and it flowed down her back. Even I could tell her clothes weren't very fashionable.
ごめんなさい。スタッフルームってどこかしら？
ここは ATF のセミナー会場だけど。
Clearly not a place where a middle school girl belonged. She'd probably just come to the wrong place.
そんなの分かっているわ。何度同じ話を繰り返せば気が済むの？
いや、今初めて行ったんだけど。
私にとってはあなたで4回目よ。この場所に来てからね。
Irritated, she pulled a card out of her jacket. It was one of the IDs given out to invited guests. Her name and the name of her workplace were written on the front. Akihabara Techno Forum guest Victor Chondria University, USA. Brain Science Institute. Maho Hyajo. Victor Chondria. So I was reading wrong. Brain science, the field of study that researches animal brains, also called neuroscience, investigates the brain from a number of perspectives including biology, genetics, medicine, psychology, and electrical engineering. One minute. I will see if I can. Searching for sound configurations right now. But I can't access it through here. Voice is okay. Music, let's set it to a little lower. Okay. Now let's get back. I looked at the card and then at her, then back at the card, then I looked at her again. I finally realized.
あ、そういうことか。そのカード、どこに落ちてたんだ？拾ってくれたん。
私も4回目よ。
She sighed and showed me another card. This one was a photo ID from Victor Chondria University.
ええ
It was the same ID I'd seen Krizu holding before on another word line. The photo on the card, yeah, that was definitely her.
ヒヤ城真帆って読むの。私の名前ヒヤ城真帆。漢字でもローマ字でも誰も読めた試しがないから先に言っとくわ。
ビクトル・コンドリア大学の中学生？
寝ぼけるなら夜にして。大学に中学生がいるわけないでしょ。
それもそうだな。じゃあ飛び級か。
Unlike in Japan, it wasn't uncommon for Americans to skip grades. Kurisu had made it to university at age 17. But still, a girl this young working in a university lab?
一つ確認していいかしら。
おお
あなた今少なからず衝撃を受けてるわよね。こんな小さい子が信じられないかしら。それともこの年齢ですごいの方。
She got me.
高校をよく見なさい。
The girl, Maho Hiajo, pointed to part of the ID with her slender fingers. She was born in 89 and it was 2010, so
21歳。
つまり立派な成人女性よ。中学生じゃないのよ。もちろん小学生でも幼稚園児でも。
And then she puffed out her chest. There wasn't much to see, but I could imagine her saying, "They look bigger when I'm not wearing clothes. They are huge."
何かしらその顔は。
あ、いや、悪かった。謝る。
I couldn't believe it. She was older than me. If Taru was here, he'd be dancing around screaming legal lolly for the win. That's really messy. Net slang used to express excitement about a positive event or experience abbreviated for the win. And refers to a character in anime or manga who appears to be no older than an elementary schooler but is in fact over the legal age of 20. The amount of jokes about this character is just exaggerated. One or two it would be okay, but they really insist. And the jokes, they become less and less fun.
まあいいわ。世界中どこへ行っても同じ目に遭ってるから。
うん、そうだろうな。
何か言った？
あ、いや、別に。
Still the Brain Science Institute? That's where Chris worked. Which means this kid, no, this person, might know a lot about Chris. I held back the impulse to start badgering her with questions. I looked at the pamphlet with the seminar schedules. Mitochondria's lecture was the last one for the day and was clearly intended to be the biggest. Was this Maho Hiajo girl going to give a lecture? Just like Kurisu had done at the summer convention. No, wait, that's wrong. That never happened. Lysomax never gave any lectures over the summer. That happened in the Alpha World Line. The world line I inhabited now, before the summer convention, she'd already.
君が今日は登壇を？
いいえ、私は助手として来たの。あと通訳も兼ねてね。
I looked at a pamphlet again and saw that the lecturer was a man named Alexis Leskinen. Alexis Leskinen, a professor at Victor Kondria University and the chief researcher of the Brain Science Institute.
テーマは人工知能革命か。面白そうだな。
The topic is the artificial intelligence revolution. Yeah. Sounds interesting.
時間があったらぜひ聞いてみてほしいわね。
そうするよ。あ、スタッフルームだったよな。
I led Maho over to the elevator hall and showed her where the staff room was.
ありがとう。
I had no reason to hang around her any further. I said goodbye and was just about to turn around. Just then, the elevator opened. A woman emerged. The instant I saw her face, every hair on my body stood on end. Moeka, Kiryu. It was all I could do to keep myself from screaming. Calm down. This is the Battle World Line. My Uri is alive. Moeka's not going to kill her. Our eyes met. The eyes on the other side of her glasses were as dead as ever, and it was impossible to tell what she was thinking. I frantically averted my gaze before she realized something was wrong. She tilted her head for a second, but quickly lost interest in me and turned toward Maho.
ああ、雑誌社の方でしたよね。お約束通り取材を。
Even in this word line, Moeka still only spoke in faint whispers.
レスキネン教授はまだなんです。少しお待たせしてしまいますけど。はい。それまで私でよければシステムの概要でもお願いします。
The two of them disappeared into the staff room. As I watched them leave, I took a deep breath. I tried to calm down, but it wasn't working.
桐生萌か。もしかしてまたお前なのか。
It was a terrible feeling, like a cold finger tracing the wounds in my heart. That night, when the terrorist threat shut down all the trains in Akihabara. That awful night when I just knew something was going to happen.
ここでもまたお前が。
Or was I just imagining things? Was she just a magazine reporter now instead of a CERN rounder? Okay, since I'm from Brazil, I will read CERN, not SERN. Rounder, fictional, and unofficial group that works for CERN. It is in theory an independent group that does technology research. Rounders are deployed all over the world and their exact numbers are unknown. Their real objective is to recover the IBM 5100s, the only machine capable of hacking CERN's hidden database, as well as crushing any attempts at time machine research around the world and taking the scientists back to work for CERN. They are, in essence, mercenaries who are capable of using force if necessary. Some of the members on the bottom rung do their work without ever meeting another rounder face to face. CERN, fictional, the European Laboratory for Nuclear Research. CERN, however, is not an acronym for this group. It comes from the French Société Européenne de Recherche Nucléaire, European Society for Nuclear Research, its predecessor group. The lab consists of the world's largest particle accelerator on the outskirts of Geneva, Switzerland. It crosses the border between France and Switzerland, and there is a bank, library, post office, and living quarters located on the grounds. Research teams from all over the world, but particularly the 19 countries of Europe, gather here to perform experiments in elementary particle physics. Several thousand people work at CERN. No, even if Moika was around her, we had nothing to do with CERN anymore. CERN wouldn't be watching us. I took another deep breath, grabbed some of the anxiety meds in my pocket, and swallowed them down with some mineral water I'd bought ahead of time. It would take 15 minutes for them to kick in. Those 15 minutes were always pretty rough. I laughed at myself a little and sat down on one of the reception desk's chairs. The table was filled with leaflets, pamphlets, and other things for the attendees. My eyes wandered to one of the pamphlets. Nakabachi Theory and the Genealogy of Pseudoscience. This pamphlet was for Professor Izaki's seminar. Nakabachi Theory. The paper he'd announced in Russia. That paper held the key to creating a real time machine. On that day, July 28th, Nakabachi had stolen the paper from Kurisu, his own daughter, and left with it. I knew that. Only Nakabachi and I knew that. I flipped through the pamphlet. It was a brief introduction to the many forms of pseudoscience and fake scientific discoveries that had emerged since the start of the 20th century. On its own, it did make for interesting reading. And at the end of the pamphlet, Nakabachi theory was introduced as nothing more than another entry in that long list of fakes. So, Dr. Nakabachi's time machine theory had been completely ignored by the academic world. All the glory, fame, and power he'd wanted so badly that he was willing to get rid of his own daughter, he didn't get any of it. And I'd heard rumors that after the announcement, he'd been imprisoned in a Russian lab. To make it even funnier, he thought he was getting VIP treatment. For a short time, there were essays and interviews in bogus academic journals. Even there, it was obvious it had all gone to his head. The ironic thing was that Nakabachi theory was completely correct and completely revolutionary. The Russian government was worried about it leaking, and the SVR was doing everything it could to keep it under wraps. SVR, the Service of the External Reconnaissance of the Russian Federation, aka SVR, Russia's External Intelligence Agency. Its HQ is in Yazenovo in southern Moscow. After the old Soviet Committee for State Security, KGB, was disbanded, the new SVR was modeled after the KGB's first directorate. There are other intelligence agencies in Russia as well, such as the Main Intelligence Directorate, GRU, and the Federal Security Service, FSB. Each of them has their own territory and specialization. But under the surface, there was a full-scale information war beginning over the paper. The time traveler from 2036, John Titor, had told me so, which meant it had to be true. John Titor. In November 2000, a man appeared on an American message board claiming to be a time traveler from the year 2036. This became an internet phenomenon that inspired a storm of questions and debate. The man called himself John Titor and published partial pictures of the manual for his time machine as well as an explanation for how it operated. He also made clear what would happen in the near future, how interference with the timeline worked, the principles behind the multiverse and parallel worlds, as well as timelines and word lines. And then, 4 months after his appearance, he left a final message saying that he'd completed his mission and would be returning to his world. Then he vanished for good. Was World War III really going to happen? There was no point in thinking about it. Just a little more before the drugs kicked in. I closed my eyes. Several hours later, the convention was going well. After Professor Izaki's seminar, most of the students from my university went home, but I killed some time and came back. I wanted to hear the Victor Kondria lecture. I headed to the hall with plenty of time to spare and saw Maho coming from the staff room. She was with a very tall foreigner. Was that Alexis Leskinen? Didn't seem like an American name, but maybe he was an immigrant like Kurisu, or at least descended from one. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the looks on their faces were so serious that I couldn't help but listen. Since they were both speaking in English, I could barely make out any of it, but I could tell from their voices that it wasn't a pleasant chat. Wait, did I just hear the word Makizi? I hated the fact that I couldn't speak English. If I'd known this was going to happen, I would have gone to an English school. The two of them walked into the waiting room for lectures. It was located right next to the UPX theater. Put together the few fragments I was able to understand. Fire at Kurisu's house. Mrs. Makiz is alright. Robbery. The police called off the investigation. Why was the FBI there? Doesn't make sense. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, an American police organization. It is attached to the Department of Justice and handles crimes that occur on American soil. There are approximately 30,000 people who work for the FBI. When crimes take place involving a wide area in multiple states, the FBI investigates under federal law. I think that's what they were saying. Kurisu's house? Do they mean where she lived in America? Her mother should still live in America. Is that where the fire was? And then words like robbery and the investigation was called off. I really wanted to know more. I stood there and worried until it was time for the lecture to begin. With nothing else to do, I went inside the theater. I could tell earlier by looking at the size of the crowds going inside, but it was a very high energy crowd. The atmosphere was clearly different than Izaki's seminar, which was mostly students here for credit, there for credit. The place was nearly full with a crowd of scientists and people who wanted to learn about cutting-edge technology. Mitochondria's researchers had published a slate of papers in Science recently and had gotten a lot of media attention. Maybe that was why. Were there any empty seats? I found a single open seat at the edge. I found a single empty seat at the edge. But when I looked at who was sitting next to it, I moaned. You again? Moeka Kiryu was there. She was speaking to no one, just typing endlessly into her phone. I once named her Shining Finger because of her incredible typing speed, and she was as fast as ever. Who was she talking to? I didn't even want to imagine. I quickly turned away and looked for another seat. Dr. Leskinen reached the podium almost the exact instant I sat down. There was a huge wave of applause. But when they saw the tiny little girl come up next to him, the applause faded into confused murmurs. Maho must have expected this. Her expression didn't change in the slightest as she stood next to the professor. In fact, when she took the microphone from the professor and looked around the theater, she looked like she belonged there.
Ladies and gentlemen,
First, Dr. Leskinen began to speak in English. When he made eye contact with Maho, she began to interpret.
thank you for attending
皆
this
さん
seminar.
本日は私のセミナーに集まってくださって感謝します。
I am Alexis Leskinen
ビクトル・
at
コンドリア大学
University
脳科学
University
研究所の
I specialize
アレ
in
クシス・レ
brain
スキネンです。
processing systems and
専門は
artificial
脳
intelligence.
信号処理システムおよび人工知能理論になります。そして私は助手のヒアジョウマホです。同じく脳科学研究所で教授の指導に沿って研究をしています。よろしく。
The audience started murmuring again. That was the same way I responded when I met her. Well, that will happen, yeah.
Now, without further ado,
では
I'd
早
like
速
to
ですが
introduce some of
私たち
the
の最先端研究の
research.
一端をご紹介します。
I know today's theme is
テーマは
revolution in
人
artificial
工知能
intelligence.
革命
But
と
I
しま
think
したが
you'll find this
これ
research
からデモンストレーションするシステム
wildest
は
expectations.
おそらく皆さんの想像を超えたものではないかと思っています。
Artificial intelligence, often shortened to AI. There have been many different definitions for this word since its creation. For example, some use it to refer to control systems with self-directed learning capability, while others use it to refer to programs whose thought routines mirror a human's. Dr. Leskinen stood in front of the laptop that had been placed on the podium and started to type.
This terminal here is connected
こ
to
の
one
パソ
of
コン
the
ですが
supercomputers
研
that
究所のスーパーコンピューターの一つと接続されています。ああ、まだプロジェクターには映さないで。
One of the staffers was about to display the laptop's screen on the front projector. Some kind of important program must have been booting up because Maho Hiajo stopped them.
Sorry, this is all
す
still
み
in
ません。
development.
まだ開発
We
途中
haven't
なんで
had
す。
time to develop much of UI
非
yet.
常に美的センスのないプログラムが画面いっぱいに溢れ返っています。
Honestly, I'm
こ
a
んな
little
チープな
embarrassed
プログ
by
ラムを
all
見ら
this
れるのは
computer
恥ず
data.
かしい。
I almost feel like
裸を
I
見られるよ
make
り
it
も
here.
ね。
Any engineers out there?
この中にエンジニアの方がいるなら理解していただけますよね。
Some of the audience got the professor's joke and laughed.
Anyway, while this finishes,
起動するまでの間
I'll give you a quick
この
overview
システ
of
ム
our
全
system.
体の概略を説明しましょう。
There was another projector in the center of the stage. A diagram appeared on its screen. And at the top of the diagram was a Japanese translation for the general audience. An analysis of neural pulse signals relating to memories stored in the temporal lobe. An electrical signal that travels through a human's nerve cells. It's used to quickly spread information between cells. Temporal cortex, a part of the cerebrum located at the side of the brain. It controls memory, judgment, emotional restraint, hearing, and more. It's also used for accessing the hippocampus, which is on the edge of the cerebrum. I knew that title well. In fact, I was sure I could never forget it. It was the title of an essay written by a 17-year-old genius and published in Science. She had completely analyzed the nerve impulse patterns that govern human memory and used that to digitize the memories themselves into data. And she had used that to invent a time leap machine right in front of my eyes. Though none of that had actually happened anymore.
サイエンス誌に掲載されたのでご存知の方もいるでしょう。これは私たちのチームにいた天才的な日本人研究者によって提唱され完成されたものです。人間の記憶は大脳皮質、とりわけ側頭葉に記録されます。いわゆるフラッシュメモリみたいなもの。
Cerebral cortex, the gray-colored external layer of the human brain. It is only a few millimeters thick but consists of over 10 billion neurons in countless layers. The central core governing sensation, movement, and mental activity. Different parts handle different functions.
そのメモリに記憶を書き込んだり読み出したりするのが側頭葉にある海馬傍回という部位になります。
The hippocampal gyrus is found on the outside edge of the hippocampus. It is the part of the brain that controls memories and spatial recognition. It is responsible for spatial processing as well as the sensation of being familiar with a situation or place. It plays an important role in memory encoding and retrieval. Dr. Leskinen pointed to the diagrams of the brain and hippocampus on the screen.
脳はニューロンと呼ばれる細胞の間を電気信号が伝わっていくことで働いています。
Neuron, also referred to as nerve cells. Cells specialized for information processing. Electrical pulses flow through these cells to share various types of information, making them a form of transmission mechanism.
記憶というのも実はこういった電気信号の伝わりの一つなのです。その働きを制御しているのが海馬傍回と言ってもいいでしょう。つまり電気信号が海馬傍回を出入りすることで記憶は作られていくんですね。そこでマキセ・クリスはこの論文を書いた日本人研究者です。マキセ研究員は考えました。海馬傍回を通る電気信号が電気信号のパターンと大脳皮質の
Maho started to have trouble with her interpreting. She was getting confused. No matter how good you were with languages, interpreting for a long period of time had to be difficult. I'd once read an article on the internet that said even a professional can't do it for more than 20 minutes. International conferences and live broadcasts from overseas were actually handled by a team of people switching off. Or maybe, was she having trouble because Kuriso's name came up? Dr. Leskinen saw she was having trouble and cut himself off.
すみません。マキセ研究員は海馬傍回を出入りする電気信号のパターンに着目しました。 そのパターンが大脳皮質のどの記憶と対応しているのか解析を行って完全なデータを得たのです。これによって記憶という曖昧でアナログなものを電気信号のパターンの組み合わせというデジタルなものに変換する基礎理論が確立されたのです。これがサイエンス誌に掲載された彼女の論文です。そして現在私たちのチームはその理論をもとに人間の記憶をデジタルデータとして取得するシステムを開発しています。
A wave of whispers swept across the theater.
それはすなわち人間の記憶をコンピューターに保存しそれを活用するシステムということになります。
The whispers turned into a low roar. I see. So even after her death, Kurisu's research was being carried on. Of course, maybe it was natural that it would be. That was the basic theory for time leaping, which I had proved myself, even if I could never prove it to anyone else in the Alpha World line. My memories had been turned into data and stored on a computer. There was no doubt about that. And what Dr. Leskinen was talking about right now was the basic technology required for that process.
現在私たちが行っているプロジェクトは主に2つです。1つは医療分野への応用です。
The slide on the projector
精
changed.
神生理学研究所と共同で行っているプロジェクトです。コンピューターに保存した記憶データを海馬傍回を通して再び元の脳に書き戻すというもので、
Incredible!
Someone who looked like a grad student in the front row shouted. Dr. Leskinen didn't seem particularly put off by the interruption. Maho continued her interpretation.
信じがたいですか。その気持ちは理解できます。私も皆さんの立場であればそう言ったでしょう。しかしこの研究に私たちは手応えを感じています。これが実用化できればどんなに素晴らしいことでしょう。例えば老化による記憶障害、あとはアルツハイマーなどそうしたものへの対処療法が期待できます。
Symptomatic therapy, treatment intended not to cure the cause of a disease but to alleviate its symptoms and relieve pain. Painkillers and fever reducers are examples of symptomatic therapy.
患者の記憶をデータとして自動的にバックアップしていくのです。記憶が失われたとしてもその都度 PC にアクセスし脳内にデータを再インストールすることが可能です。それによって忘却の進行を食い止められるのではないか、私たちはそう考えています。最終的には海馬傍回から PC 内の記憶データに常時アクセスできるようになるでしょう。そうすれば脳機能が失われた状態、例えば脳が激しく損傷したり萎縮してしまった場合などですが、そのような状態でも変わらず脳機能を維持できます。あたかも外部ストレージと同じように。
External storage, a data storage unit that can be detached from a computer or cell phone or other electronic device. Some examples include hard drives and flash memory. A strange feeling gripped the hall. Part of it was shock and the feeling that they were witnessing the announcement of an incredible technology. Part of it was skepticism that a system like this could ever actually work. Part of it was revulsion at the idea of playing around with a human brain like that. And excitement born of all these things passed from one member of the crowd to another. Dr. Leskinen raised his hand to encourage questioners.
I'm saying some of you have questions.
どうやら2つ目のプロジェクトをお話しする前に質問を受け付けないといけないようですね。
I'll answer as many as I can. Go
で
ahead.
きる範囲でお答えします。どうぞ。
Many hands were raised. I could tell that there was a wide age range of people interested. Both young and old were raising their hands. Dr. Leskinen pointed to a questioner. This was the first question. Sampling would be required when digitizing analog memories. Does that mean any information would be lost? Sampling, the act of taking data at regular intervals. The professor nodded as he listened to the question in Japanese and began to respond in English when the speaker finished. Maybe he was able to understand Japanese, if not speak it.
Let me reflect
そ
that.
の質問を言い換えると、
You're talking about attempting to
オーケストラの生演奏
orchestral
を
performance and how
ワ
we
ブ
can
のデー
navigate
タに
the
保存する
perfect
際、
cadence, best
生
possible
演奏のすべてを完璧に記録することはできないと。
That's certainly a concern.
確かに
It's
そ
one
の
of the
懸念
most
はありま
pressing
す。
issues our
現在
research
の
is
研究で
addressing right now.
最も困難な問題の一つです。
Now, if the intercerebral network
脳
is
内の
simple
ネット
on
ワー
the
クが
stage for
神経伝
neurotransmitters
達物質
like
の
binaural
オンオフだけ
data,
で
it would be easy.
つまり二進数的にデータのやり取りをしているのであれば簡単な問題でした。
After all, that's
それ
how
は
our computer deals
デジタル
with
データと同じことだからです。
Unfortunately, intercerebral
しかし
transmission
実
substances
際に
and
は
signals are
伝
much
達
more
物質
analog
や
than
電
they
気信
are
号
digital.
は脳内でアナログ的に変化することが分かっています。
So at present, the best
この
solution
問題
is
に関しては
simply to store data
今の
at
と
the
ころ
highest possible
より
sampling
高い
rate.
サンプリングレートでデータをサンプルする方法しか手段を持っていません。
In musical tunes, you could
音
say
楽の
it's
話で
like
言えば
something at
44.1kHz よりも 48kHz よりも 96kHz でサンプリングするといった具合です。
It's still digital data, of course,
それによって
but the information
デ
we
ジ
are
タルであ
using
りな
is
がら
as close as
アナ
possible
ログ
to
データ
the
に
analog
近い
signal.
情報を得ようとしています。
Little by little, the mood in the room was turning to disappointment. People were beginning to wonder if this was just a pretty theory that wouldn't work in reality. More questions came. All of the questioners were skeptical of the professor's theory, and many of them seemed to be outright challenging him. I started to get upset. This was Dr. Leskinen's research, but it was also Kuriso's. I knew better than anyone that it worked, and the sight of so many people refusing to give it a chance infuriated me. Were these people really scientists? I tried to keep myself under control and looked back towards the podium. Was she mad? She certainly looked disappointed. Dr. Leskinen was very polite with the rude questioners, acknowledging the problems. With the theory, she was very different. Her anger was starting to seep into her interpreting too. I felt a kind of kinship with her. The question and answer session continued.
そもそもこれは医学的に無謀でしょう。デジタルデータを脳に書き戻すなんて絶対に不可能だ。正気の沙汰ではない。サイエンス誌に掲載されたあの論文も読みましたが、にわかには信じられない。ましてや筆頭著者が若干17歳の女性だったとあっては。
That was the one thing I couldn't ignore.
あなたね。
意義あり。
あ、
The two people on the stage and the entire audience all turned toward me at once.
やってみもしないで何がわかるって言うんだ。最初は無理だと思われてた技術なんてこの世にいくらでもあるじゃないか。でもそれを克服した研究者がいたからこそ今があるんだろう。ただ批判するだけじゃ何も生まれない。
The whole theater went silent, but I didn't regret standing up.
あなた
On the stage, Maho Hiajo was staring at me in shock. And as for Dr. Leskinen, I saw a flash of white teeth as our eyes met.
Outcome is wearing something.
He started to applaud. Why was he applauding? That just makes things embarrassing.
素晴らしい。彼はなかなか大したやつだ。ですって。
Nonetheless, a scientist
た
must
だし、
always remain composed.
科学者たるもの常に冷静でなければいけない。
The only time when it is
大
possible
声で
to
怒鳴って
shock
いい
is
のは
when your
実験
experiment
が
is a
成功
success
した
and you
時
say,
の
"We did,"
We did it
and that should be enough.
それだけで十分だそうですよ。
すみません。
I lowered my head and sat down. Thought I was calm, but I guess I let my emotions get away from me. I hadn't grown up at all in the past 6 months. If Chris was here, she'd make fun of me again. I could feel the rest of the audience staring at me coldly. It hurt. If I could have left, I would have wanted to, but I was too interested in hearing the rest of Dr. Leskinen's talk to move.
And anyway, moving on.
それでは皆さん、
Oh, first, a round of
でも
applause, please, for
そ
our
の前
great
に
friend.
勇敢な彼に拍手をお願いします。
Oh no, please no!
Men like him are
彼のような挑戦者こそが
inept
科学を
for
進歩させ、
revolutionary race.
あっと驚くような理論を作り上げるのです。
He may even become the third
彼なら
Einstein.
きっと第3のアインシュタインになれるかもしれませんね。
Third Einstein. Let's check this. Albert Einstein, 1879-1955, a German Jew. Known as the father of modern physics, he developed many important theories, including the theory of general relativity and theory of special relativity, winner of the 1921 Nobel Prize in Physics. And who was the second?
The second Einstein, of course,
ちなみに
he was slightly
第2のアインシュタインはここにいるちょっと小うるさい私の助手。
Ah, okay.
変なこと言うのはやめてください、教授。
Cadence chuckled.
さて、ここで私はしばらく通訳をお休みさせていただきます。これから私よりも優秀な通訳が登場します。これが私たちのチームが今最も力を入れている2つ目のプロジェクト、アマデウスシステムです。
When she finished speaking, Maho walked to the back of the stage. Dr. Leskinen's sign on the PC screen was displayed on the projector. And then I heard a voice.
皆さん、初めてお目にかかります。
The murmuring got louder than before, but it felt more uncertain than surprised. On the screen, I could see a detailed 3D model of Maho, the girl who'd just been interpreting.
ちなみにこれは映
By
画
the
など
way,
で有
this
名なドリンクワークススタジオに作成してもらったモデルです。
DreamWorks Studios, fictional, an American CG movie production company. Of this parody of DreamWorks, Maho Hiajo chimed in from the back of the stage.
声については私のボイスサンプルをデータベースにして日本の山名が作ってくれました。
Yamana, fictional, an instrument maker that was founded in the 19th century. The 2000s, they began to develop and sell artificial voice software and DTM, desktop music software for PCs. This was CG. It sure looked real to me. The professor said something into the laptop's microphone. And then the 3D model of Maho Hiajo on the screen opened its mouth.
私はヒアジョウマホです。正確に言うなら78時間22分前のヒアジョウマホから派生した存在ということになります。
It sounded far more human than any artificial voice I'd ever heard.
先ほどから どうして私を早く紹介しないのかととてももどかしく思っていましたよ。以前から感じていましたが、どうも教授は人が悪いようですね。まったくだわ。
The Maho Hiajo on the screen spoke with a slightly irritated expression. The Maho Hiajo by the wall nodded in agreement. Dr. Leskinen simply smiled. What was going on here? What part of this was their biggest project? The rest of the audience didn't seem to have any more of a clue than I did.
皆さんの多くは疑問に思っています。人間の記憶をデータとして取り出したり、それを保存したり、さらにはそのデータを活用したり、そんなことが本当に可能なのかと。それでは私は一体何でしょうか。私は78時間23分前のヒア城真帆の脳内から取り出された記憶を持ち、そのデータをベースにして動いているのです。
What did she just say? The professor said something else in rapid English and asked the Maho on the screen to translate it. But she, if she was the right word, hesitated and went silent. I looked at the real Maho, and she was responding exactly the same way.
教授、今のは。教授、今の発言はセクシャルハラスメントとして大学に訴えてもいいでしょうか。
Dr. Leskinen laughed cheerfully and responded to her. The conversation was in quick English, and over half the audience couldn't understand it. The real Maho sighed and took back the microphone.
教授はですね、私に対して、いえ、私の記憶で動作しているこのアマデウスに対して質問に答えてごらんと言いました。いつ頃までパパとお風呂に入っていたかとか、初恋はいつだったかとか、何でも答えられるだろうと。ああ、もうそれ以上通訳しなくていいわ。恥ずかしいからやめてくれないかしら。私はそういう質問には一切答えないわよ。
The professor said something else, and the Maho on the screen groaned and turned away.
クレジットカードの番号なんてもっと言えません。あと1週間前に着ていたパジャマの色なんて覚えてるわけないですよ。
What was this? It was so natural I couldn't tell at first, but this was something unbelievable, wasn't it? It felt very different from a typical AI, I could tell that much. It wasn't answering the questions it was given. And because they were embarrassing, was it programmed to respond like that to certain questions for the purpose of this demonstration? It was possible, that's all it was, but if that conversation wasn't programmed in advance, the rest of the crowd seemed to reach the same conclusion. I did, and the whisper started to turn into surprised murmur.
ねえ、ちょっといい加減このいたずらな子供を何とかしてくれないかしら。何をしたいのか理解はできるけど、とにかく恥ずかしいわ。
The copy of Maho was complaining to the original. It felt like I was watching a pair of twin sisters talking.
いたずらな子供ではなく、レスキネン教授が面白がってなかなか説明してくれないので、代わりに私がお話しします。
Maho walked back to the professor.
皆さん、もうお分かりかと思いますが、アマデウスは自分が話していいこととそうでないこと、あるいは話したいことと話したくないことを自ら判断して喋っています。私たちはアマデウスにそういったプログラムを一切施していません。
I
彼
knew
女
it.
は与えられた私の記憶からそれを独自に判断し、自律的にそういう行動をとっているのです。
The Maho on screen suddenly took over for her.
そしてこれは先ほどの医療分野への応用とは方向性が真逆になってしまい、研究所内でもずっと議論が交わされていることですが、私は不必要な情報をいつの しまう。というか、記憶の引き出しから出してこられなくなるのです。例えば、1週間前に着ていたパジャマの色、確かにそれを知っていたはずなのに、そのような情報は生存していく上で必要がないからです。このようにアマデウスは記憶のインプットやアウトプットが人間のそれと非常に近いのです。これは私たちも驚くべき結果として研究を重ねている最中で、まだ詳しくは解明されていません。
As Maho finished up, Dr. Leskinen took the microphone back. She resumed interpreting as he continued the lecture.
さらに私たちを驚かせたのは、アマデウスが意図して嘘をつくということ。何らかのトラブルやミスではなく、わざとそうするのです。嘘は人間が他人とコミュニケーションを取る上での一つの手法です。アマデウスもインプットされた記憶を自律的に検討し、必要であれば自分や他人のために平気で嘘をつきます。教授、誤解を招くような言い方はやめてください。嘘をつくのに平気なことなんてありません。私だって両親が咎めます。
Dr. Leskinen cut off. He seemed to be hesitating. Maho didn't seem especially surprised by this. Maybe she knew the reason. But a moment passed and the professor continued. And Maho translated his words like there was nothing shocking about them at all.
このような検証を続けていくことで、最終的に私たちはアマデウスに人間と同様の魂を宿すことができるのではないかと考えています。
I was stunned. A soul? Should one of the leading brain scientists in the world really be using a word with such a vague definition?
これこそ本当の意味での人工知能ということになります。
The roll hall got very quiet, and it was sheer chaos for a while after that, as everyone tried to debate their own personal theories with Dr. Leskinen at once. Good time to end the transmission. I'll see you on Let's Play Steins Gate Zero Chapter 2. Goodbye.